Ladies, allow me to whisper a secret that the vast majority of men will vehemently deny, even if they were being grilled by federal agents. A man does not get down on one knee simply because you are stunning, because the relationship is sailing smoothly, or because his mother insists you are a nice girl and he shouldn't be foolish. No, the reality is far more clinical. Men commit to marriage only when three specific psychological triggers, three internal mechanisms, align perfectly within their psyche simultaneously. And if even a single one of those breakers is flipped to the off position, you are destined to be the girlfriend of 5 years, while he vaguely tells the world, we are just taking it day by day. So today on PsychLens, I am dismantling those three switches to explain their function, their importance, and exactly where women get it wrong. And believe me when I say this, once you grasp this concept, you will never again squander your precious time on a man who claims he isn't ready. Let us initiate the reality check. Before we launch, I must offer a disclaimer. This might sting because it is uncomfortably precise. While women assume proposals are born from romance, men propose based on logistics, internal readiness, and psychology. The bottom line is that a man typically knows within the initial 6 to 12 months if you are wife material. However, recognizing that potential and actually pulling the trigger are two entirely different universes. He won't act until the three internal conditions we're about to discuss fall into alignment, like an emotional solar eclipse. When they do, he becomes decisive, committed, and suddenly very serious. When they don't, he delays, distracts, and focuses on himself. Let's talk about the first switch. The first switch is stability. His life must feel stable enough to build something with you. This is the switch women misunderstand the most. A woman can love deeply in chaos. A man cannot commit in chaos. If his life feels like a chair with one leg missing, he will not sit down and build a marriage on it. Men propose when they feel stable, not when they feel in love. Read that again, because it changes everything. Love is not the trigger. Stability is inside his mind during instability. This is what's happening. My job isn't solid yet. My finances are unpredictable. I don't know where I'll be living next year. I don't feel like a man who can provide or protect. How do I take on a wife when I can barely take care of myself? A man cannot marry when he feels like a boy in his own life. That may sound harsh, but it's psychologically accurate. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Many women think a man's delay is fate, or bad timing, or fear of commitment. In reality, it's his unconscious sense of inadequacy speaking. Men tie their identity as husbands to their ability to stand on something solid. If his inner world feels unstable, commitment feels dangerous, not romantic. This is why you'll see a man date someone for years without proposing, then suddenly meet another woman and propose within a year. People love to say she was just better, but often she wasn't better. The timing was his life was more stable. His identity was more formed. His foundation was finally there. The switch flipped. Here's something most women never hear. Men who feel financially and professionally secure are dramatically more likely to consider marriage seriously. Not because women are expensive, but because men don't separate marriage from responsibility. In his mind, marriage means leadership, provision, protection, and long-term planning. If he feels like his life is being held together with duct tape and hope, he's not thinking about rings. He's thinking about survival. This doesn't mean you should wait around hoping he gets his life together. It means you should listen carefully to what he's already telling you. When a man says, "I just need to figure myself out," believe him. When he says, "Now isn't the right time," he's not being vague. He's being honest. The problem is not that he doesn't care. The problem is that switch 1 isn't on. You can't love a man into stability. You can't support him into readiness. You can't sacrifice yourself into making him feel like a man. That work happens internally, and it happens on his timeline, not yours. So how do you know if this switch is on? You'll see it in how he talks. He starts speaking in long-term language, not someday fantasies, but practical plans. He thinks about finances differently. He becomes more structured, less chaotic. He starts taking responsibility without being pushed. His energy shifts from wandering to building. When a man feels ready to build, he starts building mentally first. He imagines a future. He imagines responsibility. He imagines consistency. And only after that does he emotionally attach commitment to a woman. Carl Jung also said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For men, marriage doesn't feel like a privilege until they feel like themselves, until his identity is solid. Commitment feels like pressure, not fulfillment. This is why pushing a man toward marriage backfires. Pressure doesn't activate readiness, it activates resistance. If he feels you're asking him to become a husband before he feels like a man, he will pull away, not lean in. Now here's the important part. Switch 1 doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean he needs to be rich or finished or flawless. It means he needs to feel grounded, directional, anchored. Even a man building something small but stable feels safer than a man chasing everything with no footing. If switch 1 isn't on, nothing else matters. Attraction won't save it. Loyalty won't save it. Patience won't save it. Because the issue isn't the relationship. It's his relationship with his own life. And this is where many good women lose years. They think love is enough. They think if they're supportive enough, understanding enough, patient enough, he'll finally be ready. But readiness is internal, not relational. Carl Jung warned, "What you resist persists." A man who resists responsibility will continue to delay commitment until something inside him shifts. No amount of reassurance can replace that shift. When switch 1 finally flips, his entire posture changes. He becomes calmer, more decisive, less avoidant. He starts wanting structure instead of running from it. And only then do the other switches even have a chance to activate. Because without stability, there is no peace. And without peace, there is no future worth committing to. And that leads us naturally to the second switch, the one that has nothing to do with his life and everything to do with how he feels when he's with you. And that brings us to the second switch, the one women underestimate the most, but men feel the deepest. He must experience you as peace, not pressure. This is where many women get confused because they assume love, passion, chemistry, and effort are what make a man want to commit. Those things attract a man, yes, but they do not anchor him. Men do not marry excitement. They marry emotional safety. They marry peace. A man proposes to the woman whose presence calms his nervous system. The woman who feels like rest, not like a performance review. The woman he can exhale around. When he's with you, does his body relax or tense up? That question matters more than how much he desires you. Inside a man's mind, this switch sounds like this. I can be myself with her. I don't have to explain every thought. I don't feel judged. I don't feel like I'm failing all the time. I don't feel like I have to prove my worth every day. Life feels simpler when she's around. Not easier in the sense of lazy, but easier in the sense of emotionally sustainable. Men live in a world of constant evaluation. At work, they are measured. In society, they are compared. In relationships, many men feel examined. When a woman turns the relationship into a constant emotional courtroom, even unintentionally, his instinct is to delay commitment. Not because he doesn't care, but because marriage to him feels like locking himself into permanent pressure. Peace is not silence. Peace is emotional safety. Peace is knowing he can be honest without punishment. Peace is disagreement without destruction. Peace is respect during conflict. Peace is consistency instead of emotional volatility. This is where women misunderstand something crucial. Being emotionally expressive does not mean being emotionally unsafe. You are allowed to have needs, boundaries, emotions, and standards. Peace does not mean shrinking yourself. It means regulating yourself. A man does not think she never complains, so I'll marry her. He thinks, even when things are hard, I don't feel destroyed by her emotions. There is a massive difference. Carl Jung once said, "Where love rules, there is no will to power." A man will not commit where he feels controlled, corrected, or constantly managed. The moment a relationship starts to feel like a test he's always failing, switch 2 turns off. This is why some men fall deeply in love but never propose. They feel passion, desire, attachment, even obsession. But internally, they also feel tension, pressure to perform, pressure to communicate perfectly, pressure to become someone else, and pressure kills commitment. Men commit to the woman who feels like emotional home. Home is not perfect. Home is safe. Home is where you don't have to defend yourself constantly. Home is where mistakes don't threaten the relationship's survival. Notice something important. This has nothing to do with beauty. Men don't marry the most attractive woman they've dated. They marry the woman who makes their inner world quieter. A man may be excited by a woman who challenges him, but he settles down with the woman who steadies him. Excitement activates desire. Peace activates permanence. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Intensity burns fast. Consistency builds trust. A man watches how you react over time. Not on your best days, but on your stressed days, your disappointed days, your tired days. He's asking himself silently, can I live inside this emotional climate long term? If the answer feels like constant storms, he hesitates. If the answer feels like predictable seasons, he relaxes. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Some women unknowingly become pressure without realizing it, not because they are bad or demanding, but because they are anxious. Anxiety seeks reassurance. Reassurance becomes questioning. Questioning becomes monitoring. Monitoring becomes pressure. Men don't interpret anxiety as love. They interpret it as instability, and instability turns off the peace switch. Peace feels like this to a man. She trusts me. She doesn't try to control my emotions. She allows space without panicking. She communicates without attacking. She respects my process, even when she doesn't understand it. Being with her feels grounding. This is also why men pull away when they feel emotionally crowded. Not because they want distance from the woman, but because they want relief from pressure. Men fall in love with excitement. Men commit to peace. Romance attracts him. Peace keeps him. Respect secures him. When switch 2 flips on, something subtle changes in his behavior. He starts lingering longer. He opens up more naturally. He includes you in his mental future without effort. He stops feeling defensive. He feels safe enough to imagine permanence. This is also where many women sabotage themselves without knowing it. They mistake peace for boredom. They think if there isn't constant emotional intensity, something is wrong. So they unconsciously create tension to feel closeness again. But for a man, peace is closeness. Carl Jung warned, the meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. The question is, what kind of reaction are you creating? One that soothes or one that agitates? A man will not commit where he feels like he's constantly being evaluated, but he will marry where he feels accepted and respected while still being encouraged to grow. Peace does not mean lowering standards. It means expressing standards without emotional warfare. It means addressing issues without threatening the bond. It means understanding that how you say something matters as much as what you say. When a man feels peace with you, he begins to imagine a future not as a risk, but as a refuge. He starts thinking, if life gets hard, I'd want her beside me. That thought alone moves him closer to commitment than any conversation about marriage ever could. And once switch 2 is on, once he feels stable in himself and peaceful with you, the final switch begins to activate, quietly, almost without him noticing. The switch that decides everything, because stability gives him footing. Peace gives him safety. But the third switch answers the most important question of all. Is my life actually better with her than without her? And that's where things become irreversible. And that brings us to the third switch, the quietest one, the one men rarely articulate, but the one that ultimately decides everything. He must clearly see a future where his life is better with you than without you. This is not about love in the poetic sense. This is not about butterflies or chemistry or longing. This is about projection. A man subconsciously runs a simulation of his future, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ahead, and asks a single question. Does choosing her simplify my life or complicate it? Does being with her make me stronger or weaker? Does my life expand with her, or does it feel constrained? This switch is not emotional in the moment. It is practical, observational, and cumulative. It forms quietly over time as he watches how you move through life, how you respond to pressure, how you treat people, how you manage yourself when things don't go your way. A man commits when he realizes that you don't just add romance to his life. You add clarity, direction, order, meaning he feels that life flows better with you in it, not because you fix him, but because you align with him. Inside his mind, it sounds like this. With her, problems feel solvable. With her, I'm more focused. With her, I want to do better. With her, life doesn't feel chaotic. With her, I can see a future that actually works. This is where many women get hurt, because they assume deep love automatically leads to marriage. But men don't marry the woman they feel the most emotion for. They marry the woman who makes their future feel coherent. A man can love you deeply and still hesitate if he doesn't see how the day-to-day reality works long-term. Love answers the heart. Marriage answers the life. This is also why men pay attention to things women don't realize matter. How you handle stress. How you respond to disappointment. How you speak when you're upset. How you manage your emotions without making them his responsibility. How you deal with conflict. How you treat people who can't do anything for you. These moments register quietly. He's not analyzing you consciously. He's absorbing patterns, and patterns shape his sense of safety. He notices if you create unnecessary drama. He notices if problems escalate instead of resolve. He notices if you bring solutions or just emotions. He notices if you add structure or disorder. He notices if you support his goals or subtly compete with them. And here's the key part. He's not asking, is she perfect? He's asking, is this sustainable? Men think in systems when it comes to commitment. A system that constantly breaks down is exhausting. A system that self-corrects builds confidence. This is where reliability becomes more attractive than intensity. Reliability says, I can count on this. Intensity says, this might blow up at any moment. When a man sees that you are emotionally intelligent, meaning you can self-regulate, communicate clearly, and take responsibility for your side, his future anxiety drops. And when his anxiety drops, his desire for permanence rises. This is also where values alignment matters. He asks himself questions he may never say out loud. Do we see money the same way? Do we approach responsibilities similarly? Can we make decisions together? Can I trust her in difficult seasons? Can I trust her when I'm not at my best? If the answer begins to feel like yes consistently, switch 3 moves closer to on. And when this switch activates, something very specific happens inside him. He stops scanning. He stops wondering what else is out there. He stops comparing. He stops keeping one foot out the door. Men don't commit when they feel uncertain. They commit when uncertainty collapses into clarity. This is why the decision to marry often doesn't feel dramatic to a man. It feels calm, certain, almost obvious. He doesn't feel swept away. He feels grounded. Most women imagine the decision happens during a romantic peak, a vacation, a deep conversation, a moment of vulnerability. But for men, the moment often happens during something ordinary. Watching how you handle a stressful day without turning it into chaos. Seeing you solve a problem instead of spiraling. Observing how you treat someone who annoys you. Experiencing how peaceful it feels to sit in silence with you. Noticing that life feels smoother when you're around. That's when the thought appears quietly. If this is what life with her looks like, I could do this forever. That thought is the proposal forming long before a ring is ever bought. Men also run unconscious tests, not to trick you, but to understand the relationship's durability. These tests are not games. They are observations. He watches consistency. Do your words match your behavior over time? Or does the relationship feel unpredictable? He watches conflict. Can issues be discussed without emotional explosions? Or does every disagreement feel like a threat to the relationship? He watches respect. Do you speak to him in ways that preserve his dignity, even when you're upset? He watches emotional safety. Can he be honest without being punished for it later? He watches teamwork. Do you act like partners facing life together, or like opponents keeping score? He watches independence. Do you have a full inner life, or does everything rest on him? When these answers lean positive over time, his internal narrative changes. She's great becomes, she's my future. This is also why ultimatums backfire. They force a decision before clarity is complete, and forced decisions breed resentment, not commitment. When switch 3 flips on naturally, his behavior changes without you asking. He starts planning instead of postponing. He talks about timelines instead of possibilities. He thinks about finances differently. He starts imagining shared responsibilities. He starts protecting the relationship instead of questioning it. He doesn't feel trapped. He feels aligned. This is the moment where men stop being avoidant. Avoidance is not fear of commitment. It's fear of committing to the wrong future. When a man sees that life with you feels better than life without you, that fear dissolves. And now, when all 3 switches are close to alignment, something profound happens internally. Stability gives him footing. Peace gives him safety. A clear future gives him purpose. The last resistance fades. Because at that point, marriage no longer feels like a risk. It feels like the natural next step, and that's when everything changes. And when that resistance fades, what replaces it is not urgency, not panic, not fear of losing you, but something far more powerful. Certainty. This is where many women misread men. They expect fireworks, dramatic declarations, emotional speeches. But what actually happens inside a man when all 3 switches are nearly aligned? As quiet consolidation. His nervous system settles. His mind simplifies. His priorities narrow. He stops scattering his energy. This is the stage where a man moves from being reactive to being intentional. You'll notice it first in small ways. He becomes more deliberate with his time, less distracted, more present. He listens differently, not just to respond, but to understand. He begins protecting the relationship without being asked, not possessively, but responsibly. This is builder energy. A man in builder mode thinks in structures. He thinks in systems. He thinks in long-term consequences. And once he enters this mode, marriage stops feeling like an abstract idea and starts feeling like a practical decision. This is also the moment where many women unknowingly sabotage things by trying to speed him up. They sense the shift in panic. They start asking, "So where is this going? What are we doing? When are we getting married?" Not realizing that internally, he is already moving in that direction. But now the energy changes from alignment to pressure. Men don't move faster under pressure. They retreat to regain autonomy. This is why patience at this stage is not passive. It's strategic. When a man is consolidating his future, what he needs most is confirmation that the peace he feels with you is real, stable, and not conditional. At this stage, he is watching even more closely, not suspiciously, but attentively. He's asking himself, is this still calm when things feel serious? Does the dynamic change when commitment feels close? Many women think the hardest part is getting a man to love you. It's not. The hardest part is remaining grounded when he starts considering forever. This is where emotional maturity matters more than ever. He notices how you handle uncertainty, whether you spiral or stay centered. He notices whether your affection becomes anxious or remains secure. He notices whether you trust the process or try to control it. A man moving toward marriage wants to feel chosen, not managed. This is also where respect becomes the deciding factor. Respect is not admiration. Respect is how you speak when you're frustrated, how you react when he disappoints you, how you address issues without diminishing him. Men can tolerate conflict. What they cannot tolerate is contempt. If he senses that commitment will expose him to constant criticism, correction, or emotional punishment, he will slow down even if all three switches were almost on. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." At this stage, a man becomes acutely aware of what irritates him, not because he's looking for flaws, but because he's imagining living with those patterns long term. This doesn't mean you must be flawless. It means you must be self-aware. Self-awareness signals safety. It tells him that problems can be addressed without denial, blame, or chaos. Now, let's talk about something rarely discussed. Men do not decide to marry in isolation. They decide when their inner world feels integrated. Earlier in life, a man's desires, fears, ambitions, and insecurities pull him in different directions. Commitment feels like losing options. But when he matures, those inner conflicts begin to align. He no longer wants everything. He wants something that works. And this is where your role becomes clear without effort, without forcing anything. You become the woman who fits into his integrated life, not the woman asking him to rearrange himself around you. This distinction is subtle, but it is everything. A man will not marry a woman he feels he must become someone else for. But he will marry the woman who allows him to become more of who he already is. That's why authenticity matters more than strategy. If you are performing peace instead of embodying it, he will feel the strain eventually. If you are suppressing yourself to keep him, resentment will leak out later. Men are not fooled by temporary harmony. They sense sustainability. At this stage, the relationship begins to feel boring to outsiders. Fewer highs, fewer lows, more rhythm, more predictability, more trust. This is not decline. This is consolidation. Many women leave right here thinking the spark is gone, not realizing the foundation is forming. A man preparing for marriage does not feel wild. He feels calm. He starts thinking in we without being prompted. He imagines holidays, logistics, responsibilities. He considers how decisions affect you. He factors you into plans naturally. This is not romantic language. This is integration. And when integration happens, he begins to feel protective, not possessive, but invested. He wants to guard what he's building. This is also where you'll see him take responsibility in new ways. Not because you asked, but because it feels necessary. He organizes his life more deliberately. He becomes more consistent. He starts aligning his actions with his long-term vision. Marriage at this point feels like a logical extension of an already shared life. And this is why men often propose out of nowhere. To the woman, it feels sudden. To him, it's the final step in a process that's been happening quietly for months, sometimes years. Nothing is random here. If you understand this stage, you stop chasing reassurance. You stop forcing conversations. You stop trying to control outcomes. You observe. You stay regulated. You let the alignment complete itself. Because when a man reaches this point, he doesn't need convincing. He needs confirmation. Confirmation that the peace is real. Confirmation that the future is solid. Confirmation that choosing you is choosing stability, not struggle. And when he feels that confirmation consistently, the last internal barrier dissolves. Which leads us to the final realization, the one that explains why some men never propose at all, and why the right man does it without being asked. That realization is simple, but it changes everything. And it's where we're going next. This is also where you'll see him take responsibility in new ways. Not because you asked, but because it feels necessary. He organizes his life more deliberately. He becomes more consistent. He starts aligning his actions with his long-term vision. Marriage at this point feels like a logical extension of an already shared life. And this is why men often propose out of nowhere. To the woman, it feels sudden. To him, it's the final step in a process that's been happening quietly for months, sometimes years. Nothing is random here. If you understand this stage, you stop chasing reassurance. You stop forcing conversations. You stop trying to control outcomes. You observe. You stay regulated. You let the alignment complete itself. Because when a man reaches this point, he doesn't need convincing. He needs confirmation. Confirmation that the peace is real. Confirmation that the future is solid. Confirmation that choosing you is choosing stability, not struggle. And when he feels that confirmation consistently, the last internal barrier dissolves, which leads us to the final realization, the one that explains why some men never propose at all, and why the right man does it without being asked. That realization is simple, but it changes everything. And it's where we're going next. And here is the final realization, the one most women never hear, the one that quietly determines whether a man proposes or quietly disappears. Men do not marry when they are convinced. They marry when resistance is gone. This is the part no one talks about. A man does not wake up one morning and decide, "Today I will get married." What actually happens is far less dramatic and far more psychological. One by one, his internal objections dissolve. The reasons to wait fade. The excuses lose power. The uncertainty quiets down until one day there is no internal argument left against choosing you. At that moment, marriage doesn't feel like a leap. It feels like alignment. This is why trying to persuade a man into marriage never works. You cannot argue resistance away. You cannot logic a man into certainty. Certainty happens when nothing inside him is pushing back anymore. If even one inner voice is still saying, "Not yet. Something's off. I'm not ready. This could complicate my life." He will stall. Not because he's cruel, not because he's dishonest, but because men will not make a lifelong decision while their inner system is conflicted. Carl Jung said, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." Many men delay marriage because they are still wrestling internally with identity, freedom, fear, purpose, inadequacy. Until that inner battle settles, Commitment feels like surrender instead of choice. When all three switches are fully on, something very specific happens. He stops negotiating with himself. There is no more mental bargaining. No more maybe later. No more let's see how it goes. There is just clarity, and clarity creates action. This is when you see men who once avoided commitment suddenly become decisive. Not halfway, not slowly, fully. They don't talk about marriage endlessly. They plan it. They don't say someday. They say soon. They don't keep options open. They close the door. This is why men who are ready often move fast. It's not impulsive. It's overdue. From the outside, people think he's rushing. From the inside, he feels like he's finally caught up to himself. This also explains a painful truth. Some men never proposed, not because the woman wasn't good enough, but because one or more switches never turned on in him. He never stabilized internally. He never felt peace in the relationship. Or he never saw a future that worked. And no amount of waiting changes that time does not activate switches. Growth does. Alignment does. Readiness does. This is why staying too long with a man who is not moving forward is dangerous. Not because he's bad, but because hope without evidence drains your life. Men show readiness through behavior, not promises. When a man is aligned, you don't have to decode him. His actions become simple, clean, predictable. He shows up. He plans. He commits. He protects. He includes you. And most importantly, he does not keep you in ambiguity. Ambiguity is a sign of internal conflict. Clarity is a sign of readiness. This is why women who understand this psychology stop chasing potential and start observing patterns. They stop asking, does he love me? And start asking, is his life aligned? Does he feel peace with me? Does he see a future that works? Those questions save years. A man who says, I'm not ready, is not confused. He is communicating the state of his inner switches. The mistake is believing that love alone can flip them. Love is powerful, but it is not sufficient for marriage. Marriage is not built on emotion. It is built on alignment. When a man feels stable in himself, peaceful with you, and clear that his future is better with you in it, marriage becomes inevitable. Not forced, not negotiated, not delayed. Inevitable. This is why the right man does not need ultimatums. He does not need pressure. He requires neither constant reminders nor the looming threat of losing you. What he craves is alignment. And when that alignment clicks, the proposal feels less like an inquiry and more like a confirmation of what is already true. This translates to massive empowerment for you. You do not need to perform. You do not need to overfunction. And you do not need to wait indefinitely. Your role is not to flip those switches for him. Your role is to witness whether they are flipping organically. A healthy dynamic feels shared, not depleting. You feel prioritized, not merely put up with. You feel grounded, not on edge. You feel movement, not stuckness. And when you exist in that frequency, the commitment isn't a puzzle. It is merely a matter of scheduling. Men do not marry because of a deadline. They do not marry because of coercion. They do not marry because they are terrified of a breakup. They marry because life suddenly has clarity with you beside them. That is the cold, hard truth. 3 switches, 1 flawless system. This is simply how the brain operates. And now that you possess the blueprint of his decision-making, you will never again confuse a delay with your destiny.